The problem with spiritual ideas such as karma and reincarnation is that for many people, they have absolutely no idea what this means. But I like to say that all spiritual ideas can be rooted in biology, or at the very least, in the practical. And that if we cannot understand these ideas in a practical sense, then what is their purpose? They're just nice philosophical ideas, but really they mean nothing to us because they don't affect our direct experience, or at least we are ignorant of the way they can affect our experience. So first, let's tackle the idea of karma. See, from my own experience, being aware over my own self, over my actions, my thoughts, the manifestations in the external world, over time I have seen the effects of karma become less and less in my life. Whereas one action in the past may have caused a whole tsunami of suffering, and now that same action might only be a splash in the face. Why is this? There is almost a kind of danger or pitfall on the spiritual path in that you almost begin believing that you can get away with things because the consequences of your actions are not as strong as they once were. And so you see, from my own experience, understanding it in the most practical way I can, what I see is that karma is information stored in our body. And that information, these patterns within us, this is what causes us to be, let's say, reincarnated in certain births, to go down certain paths, to have certain characteristics. And so, in a way, karma is the trap, it is the chains that keep us tied to certain behaviors because we are being shaped into particular ways that have been in the process perhaps since the beginning of time. But you see how the spiritual masters broke free from the cycle of karma, the cycle of death and rebirth, is that they cut off the source of fuel. They cut off the ability for information to be sticky, to latch onto us, because this information pulls us down, or it pulls us in certain directions, in certain patterns. Now, for those who aren't familiar with spiritual teachings, a lot of this might be difficult to understand. But when we remember that we all are derived from the same one infinite and pure consciousness, that is infinite potential, infinite information, and that all of existence is the dynamic play between infinite everything and infinite nothingness. Consciousness or energy vibrating at the rate of infinity, and then slowing that consciousness or the energy down to zero. And in between, all of existence is experienced. And the point I'm trying to make is that at the different levels of body, mind, and soul, we are operating at different frequencies of existence, which means that we are embodying certain patterns, certain characteristics. We are conditioned, but pure infinite consciousness is unconditioned. So therefore, to transcend the cycle of death and rebirth, to erase karma, to be free from these patterns, one must immerse themselves in the pure infinite being that is consciousness. And the more we rest in this space, the more, in a way, we become wiped clean. The more we can align ourselves with the pure, unconditioned consciousness, the more we become free of any conditioned patterns. Because everything is consciousness, it's just we are conditioned consciousness and have yet to recognize our true nature as the pure, unconditioned consciousness. Karma is the information that is stored within us, within our body, within our mind, that are the chains that keep us toward certain behaviors, that direct us down certain paths. It creates the momentum that keeps us stuck in certain habits and certain behaviors. And so by resting in the stillness, in the eternal present moment, we begin slowing down the momentum of any behaviors, of any patterns. We slow down the effects of karma. And to go back to what I said earlier about the spiritual masters cutting off the source of karma, that source is identity. Because what happens is that our identity, its purpose is to gather information, one of its purposes, so that we may operate in the physical universe. And so our identity gives rise to mind. And then the mind takes our energy, our consciousness, and focuses it in certain directions. And then we receive information that is relevant to our identity, to our mind, that is relevant to our existence here on the physical plane. And then we have emotions, reactions to scenarios in the external world, reactions to images and patterns. And then physically, through biochemical reactions, this memory is stored in our bodies, in our organs, often manifested as trauma. And so these things keep us stuck. But the more you can remain in the presence of God as a non-attached awareness, if you have a negative experience, you neutralize it. If you have even a positive experience, you neutralize it, because you exist in a space of neutrality. Therefore, the information that is being received is of no relevance to you, and therefore it is not stored. That is how you stop the accumulation of more karma. But so long as we are attached to our identity, then there will still be things that are relevant to us that cause us to react emotionally, and that continue to fuel and feed this identity. And when our identity is changing and it's evolving, we are caught in the cycle of death and rebirth. Because if you think about it, my identity before I started this video will by default be different than the identity at the end of this video. Because I will have evolved. I will have changed, even in the slightest of ways. And so therefore, when we go throughout our day, from the morning we get up, we are being influenced by our experience, evolving and changing. Our identity is growing, it's evolving. But this keeps us a slave. This keeps us to certain patterns of behavior. And so the spiritual masters say, enough of this. They cut off the identity through self-realization. Therefore, most, if not all, experience becomes irrelevant. And their existence is that of resting in the arms of God, resting in the stillness, the presence. Therefore, one is burned up by this divine light. Their character, their personality slowly becomes consumed. We become more and more empty, and we dissolve into the bliss of enlightenment. Because when we are something, when we are somebody, we suffer because somebody has desires, somebody has avoidance. We want to seek pleasure and avoid pain. But when you are nobody, what is there to desire? What is there to avoid? What is there to fear? And you see, this is the true nature of things, and we are all caught in illusion. The true nature is that of complete and utter contentment, is that of joy, happiness, and love and satisfaction. And the game of life is to become separated from our true state of being, so that we can experience it in the first place, so that we can make our way back home and rejoice in the experience. to know ourselves by first forgetting. To first be trapped so we can rejoice in becoming free.